You know, last year was the hottest since records began, according to new figures from the EU's climate monitoring body.
Let's find out more. Copernicus is the name. Our climate editor, Justin Broder, has been looking at the global impact, the rise in temperatures. Very pleased to say Justin's with us here in the studio.
Morning.
There's a lot of information to get through here, Justin.
There is indeed. Now, the images from LA are like a vision of the apocalypse. Flames consuming one of the greatest cities on Earth, forcing tens of thousands of people out of their homes. Now, the causes of the fire in California aren't yet clear, but scientists have been warning that events like this would become increasingly likely as global temperatures continue to rise. And figures published this morning show they reached new record levels in 2024. Last year was the hottest ever recorded by the European Climate Monitoring Service. It was 1.6 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial records, making 2024 the first calendar year to exceed the target of 1.5 Celsius the world has agreed to try to limit the temperature rise to. Now, that doesn't mean the target has been broken, because that refers to a 20-year average, but it is a worrying indication of just how close the world is to doing so in the longer term. Let's take a look.
Remember the series of huge storms that battered the UK at the beginning of last year and left large areas flooded. Scientists judge climate change has made rain and snow on stormy days here in the UK 30% more intense. And we've had it relatively easy. Remember those devastating floods in Spain in October? Or the historic drought in the Amazon basin, which reduced river levels to a 120-year low. Or how about the 6 typhoons that hit the Philippines in just 30 days in November? These are just a few examples of the extreme weather which affected the world last year and which scientists say was linked to climate change. This map shows how the world has warmed since 1940. The blue shading is when temperatures are lower than average. Red shows where it is getting hotter. As you can see, virtually the whole planet has got warmer over the last 8 decades, with last year, 2024, the hottest ever recorded. Today's figures show the last decade has included all 10 of the hottest years on record. It represents a new climate era for our species, say experts.
We're living in a climate that humanity hasn't experienced before. We can say with confidence, when we look at ice core records, when we look at other data sets, that this is the warmest period for at least the last 100,000 years or so, and when we look back at the ice core records, it's the highest concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere for the last 800,000 years or so.
Unless greenhouse gas emissions start to reduce, global temperatures will continue to rise, increasing the likelihood of extreme weather. That presents a huge challenge for the UK, says the new head of the country's independent watchdog on climate.
The Climate Change Committee has been clear with government that we are in no way ready for the changing weather events that this economy will face. You know, increased flooding, increased drought, extreme heat, or just the kind of changing seasons and what that means for our existing infrastructure.
She says 7% of the new housing plan for the UK will be built on floodplains, for example. The government told the BBC strengthening the UK's resilience to a changing climate is one of its top priorities. It said it is investing billions in flood defences and has launched a new climate service to help local authorities prepare for changing weather patterns. The fires in LA are exactly the kind of event climate scientists have been warning about for years, and are yet more evidence of why we should all be worried about the way our climate is changing.
Yeah, and Justin, there are some truly shocking images in that report you put together there. I mean, how do you put this all together in a clear message about what's changing?
Well, I think the director of Copernicus, the director of the European Climate Monitoring Service, put it quite well. She said we, as a species, are entering a new climate era. Like she said, the hottest temperatures for at least 100,000 years, the greatest concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere for 800,000 years. Our species, the human species, evolved 300,000 years ago. We just haven't experienced these kind of temperatures before. So I think that communicates really well. Another director of Copernicus said he's running out of metaphors. He's running out of ways to describe the nature of the warming, and ways to warn the world about what's happening.
And I suppose not just running out of metaphors, but running out of metaphors or phrases that people are actually will listen to.
That will engage with,
yes.
And it will mean something to. Absolutely. It's really hard to communicate what's happening. And we kind of get used to record-breaking temperatures.
Is it hard
the last 10 years have been the hottest 10 years on record. I mean, that itself should be a terrifying warning to us. We shouldn't really need the images of California to remind us of what the consequences of all of this are.
Is it hard to communicate? Or is it hard to just get the message in to people, not just us who kind of can do the small things, but those who can do the bigger things to actually listen and make a difference?
It is very hard to communicate the level of risk that we're putting the world in, and all of us. And it's very hard for people to get together and make the kind of changes we need to make. I mean, there is a really positive story about new low-carbon technologies, but getting the kind of urgency behind the switch towards those, the reduction in carbon emissions we need to make, is really tricky.
Justin, you were talking about the LA fires a moment ago. You've been sort of looking at that and where that sits in this framework.
Well, there was a fascinating paper published by coincidence yesterday, which talked about something called climate whiplash, the fact that there's a double fingerprint of climate change in the LA fires. We had a really hot, dry summer, record heat in the California summer, but before that we had 2 years where there was actually exceptionally high rainfall. That rain allowed the vegetation to grow, so you had a big body of fuel that then dried out in the summer. There weren't winter rains. The sparks lit a fire, the strong seasonal winds, the Santa Ana winds blew, and we're all watching the consequences unfold right now. Consequences that climate scientists say are what they've been predicting, the kind of event they've been predicting for years.
Justin, thank you very much. Very interesting. We're going to talk a little bit more about Los Angeles specifically now. Thank you, Justin.